Picture this. It's a Saturday morning, and two kids are sitting at the same kitchen table. One is handed a worksheet of math problems. The other is handed a cardboard box, some tape, and a pair of scissors. No instructions, no goal, just the box. Which child do you think grows up to be smarter? If your butt said the first one, you're not alone. But you're also not right, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why. We've been told a very specific story about what it means to raise a brilliant child. Flashcards, early reading programs, Mozart in the womb, extra tutoring, advanced placement, everything. Parents pour thousands of dollars and thousands of hours into structured learning, convinced that intelligence is something you pour into a child like water into a cup. But what if the science is telling us something completely different? What if the habits that actually build exceptional intelligence are the ones most parents never even think about? This is not a video about how to make your child memorize more. This is a video about how intelligence actually grows, what neuroscience says is happening inside a developing brain, and the surprisingly ordinary habits that the research shows are linked to genuinely high cognitive ability. Some of what you're about to hear will feel counterintuitive. Some of it might even make you feel a little guilty, but all of it is grounded in decades of research, and all of it is something you can start doing or stop doing right now. Let's start with something that might surprise you. One of the most powerful things you can do to nurture a high IQ child is to let them be bored. Not entertained, not stimulated, not scheduled. Bored. And I mean genuinely, uncomfortably, nothing to do bored. Parents today have an almost allergic reaction to boredom. The moment a child says, "I'm bored," a screen appears, or an activity is suggested, or a snack materializes. We treat boredom like a problem to be solved. But Dr. Sandy Mann, a psychologist at the University of Central Lancashire, has spent years studying boredom and found something remarkable. Boredom is actually the breeding ground for creativity and divergent thinking, two cognitive capacities that are deeply intertwined with high intelligence. When a child has nothing to do, their brain doesn't shut down. It switches modes. It enters what neuroscientists call the default mode network, a state of internal processing where the mind begins to wander, make unexpected connections, imagine scenarios that don't yet exist, and essentially rehearse complex thinking. The child staring at the ceiling isn't wasting time. They are, in a very real neurological sense, doing some of the most sophisticated mental work of their day. The parents who resist the urge to fill every quiet moment are giving their children something no enrichment program can replicate, the space to develop their own inner world. Now let's talk about something that happens at dinner tables and in car rides across the country, something so simple it almost doesn't seem worth mentioning. Conversation, not quiz-style question and answer sessions, not "how was school" followed by "fine." Real conversation, the kind where a parent asks a child what they think about something genuinely uncertain, where there's no single right answer, where the child's opinion actually matters. A landmark study conducted by Betty Hart and Todd Risley at the University of Kansas tracked 42 families over 2.5 years, recording every word spoken to children in the home. What they found was staggering. By age 3, children from families where adults had frequent, rich, complex conversations with them had heard roughly 30 million more words than children from less talkative households. But it wasn't just the quantity of words that predicted later cognitive outcomes. It was the quality of those exchanges, specifically whether parents engaged children in what researchers called conversational turns, back and forth exchanges where the child was genuinely heard and responded to. Children who experienced more of these conversational turns had measurably stronger language development, working memory, and cognitive control years later. The brain, it turns out, is sculpted by dialogue. Every time a parent pauses, listens, and responds thoughtfully to what a child says, they are literally strengthening the neural architecture of intelligence. Here is something that will feel deeply uncomfortable for a certain type of achievement-oriented parent. Praising your child for being smart might actually be making them less intelligent over time. This sounds like a paradox, but the research is painfully clear on this point. Dr. Carol Dweck of Stanford University ran a now famous series of experiments in which children were given moderately difficult puzzles to solve. One group was praised for their effort. You worked really hard on that. The other group was praised for their ability. You must be really smart. Then both groups were given a choice: try harder problems or stick with the same difficulty. The children praised for effort overwhelmingly chose the harder problems. The children praised for being smart largely chose the easier ones. When they inevitably struggled, the smart group assumed they had lost their intelligence. The effort group assumed they just needed to try harder. Over time, children who are consistently told they are smart begin to avoid challenges because a challenge becomes a threat to the identity they've been given. They stop taking intellectual risks. And intellectual risk-taking, as any cognitive scientist will tell you, is precisely how the brain grows. The habit of praising process over outcome isn't just a feel-good parenting philosophy. It is a neurologically sound strategy for building genuine, lasting cognitive resilience. Let's shift to something that happens, or increasingly doesn't happen, in a child's everyday life: unstructured play. And I want to be very specific about what I mean here, because not all play is created equal. Unstructured play means children inventing their own games, setting their own rules, negotiating with other children, deciding what the goal is, and figuring out what happens when things go wrong. No adult referees, no app guiding the outcome, just kids and their imaginations. Dr. Adele Diamond, a developmental neuroscientist at the University of British Columbia, has dedicated her career to studying executive function, the cluster of cognitive skills that include working memory, cognitive flexibility, and inhibitory control. These are the skills that predict academic success better than IQ scores alone. And her research consistently points to one of the most powerful developers of executive function: pretend play. When a child decides to play spaceship, they are not just having fun, they are simultaneously holding a complex imaginary scenario in working memory, suppressing their real-world impulses to act within the rules of the game, and flexibly shifting their thinking as the story evolves. Every single one of those mental operations is an executive function skill being exercised in real time. The child rolling around on the floor pretending to be an astronaut is training their brain in ways that no workbook can touch. There's another habit that research links strongly to high cognitive development, and it involves something most families do every single night without realizing its full power: reading together. But again, the how matters enormously. A 2019 study published in the journal Psychological Science found that interactive shared reading, where a parent pauses to ask questions, make predictions, discuss the character's feelings, or connect the story to real life, produced significantly greater gains in children's language comprehension and theory of mind than simply reading aloud. Theory of mind, the ability to understand that other people have thoughts, feelings, and perspectives different from your own, is one of the most sophisticated cognitive capacities humans possess, and it develops in direct proportion to how much a child is exposed to complex human narratives. In other words, books aren't just delivering information, they are teaching children how minds work. And every time a parent says, "Why do you think she did that?" or "How do you think he felt in that moment?" they are building neural pathways for empathy, abstract reasoning, and social intelligence. Now we come to something almost no parenting book will tell you, because it looks, on the surface, like failure: letting your child struggle. Not rescuing them, not smoothing the path, not providing the answer the moment they hit a wall. This is one of the hardest things for loving parents to do, because the instinct to help is powerful and deeply human. But neuroscience has a term for what happens when children are allowed to work through difficulty on their own: productive struggle. And it is, according to researchers at Johns Hopkins University, one of the primary conditions under which deep learning occurs. When the brain is challenged, when it has to reach for a solution rather than have one handed to it, the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex engage in a much more intensive way than during passive learning. The struggle itself is the learning. A parent who habitually steps in to resolve a child's frustration is, without meaning to, depriving that child of the neural workout that builds genuine problem-solving capacity. The habit of stepping back, of saying, I believe you can figure this out, is not indifference. It is one of the deepest forms of cognitive investment a parent can make. There is one more habit I want to talk about, and in many ways, it is the most foundational of everything we've covered. It is not a curriculum, it is not a technique, it is emotional safety. Dr. Mary Ainsworth's groundbreaking attachment research, later expanded by decades of neuroscience, has shown that a child's ability to think, to explore, to take risks, to recover from failure, to learn is profoundly dependent on whether they feel fundamentally safe in their relationship with their caregivers. When a child is securely attached, when they know that comfort is available and that love is not contingent on performance, their nervous system is calm enough to let the prefrontal cortex do its job. The brain cannot be curious and afraid at the same time. Chronic stress, fear of failure, and emotional insecurity flood the developing brain with cortisol, which literally impairs the functioning of the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, the very regions responsible for learning, memory, and intelligent decision-making. The child who feels safe at home is the child whose brain is biologically free to be brilliant. No enrichment activity, no advanced curriculum, no gifted program can override a nervous system that is constantly in threat mode. So, let's come back to those two children at the kitchen table, the one with the worksheet and the one with the cardboard box. The research is telling us that the child given the box, given the freedom to imagine, to fail, to create, to struggle and invent and try again, is the one whose brain is being stretched in all the ways that matter most. Intelligence, real intelligence, is not something you install in a child. It is something that grows in conditions of safety, curiosity, conversation, challenge, and play. The habits that raise a child with an exceptionally capable mind are not the ones that look the most impressive from the outside. They are the ones rooted in the most honest understanding of how human brains actually develop. Less performance, more exploration. Less praise for outcomes, more celebration of effort. Less protection from struggle, more trust in a child's capacity to grow through it. Less filling every silence, more room for the quiet work of a wandering mind. The most brilliant thing you can give a child is not a head start, it is a foundation. And foundations are not built in classrooms or apps or enrichment schedules. They are built in 10,000 small, ordinary, deeply human moments between a parent and a child. Moments that say, I see you, I believe in you, and I trust your mind to do what it was built to do.